Welcome to your channel, Saptarishi Astro Sutra. We are here yet again with another interesting interview, and it's my pleasure to welcome the distinguished and inspiring figure in the world of Jyotisha and Vedic astrology, Sir Garry Gomes. Yes, you heard it right. With a remarkable journey of spanning over 3 decades, Sir has not only contributed to the extensively to the field of astrology, and also he has actively participated through his writing in the publication, including ACVA Journal, BAVA Journal, and Mountain Astrologer. His writing has also been featured in the Indian astrological magazines. He is not only the dean for academic of ACVA, but also the vice president of Kepler's College. Sir has shaped the learning and experience for many of the young astrologers. Today, we get an opportunity to get the glimpse from him insights of Gemini Sutra, for which he has been honored by Bharati Vidya Bhavan. And also, he would be dealing with few of the transit happening across the year. He was the person who successfully predicted that the Trump in this election of America is going to win with a huge margin. That's the video of his prediction is also being published in his YouTube channel, which you can go and research upon it. And his knowledge of mundane astrology always blows up my mind. I look forward and welcome Sir Garry Gomes to enlighten us with his beautiful knowledge and also guide us through the Vedic astrology. Yes, sir. Namaste.
No, namaste. Thank you, Suraj. I have to make a correction. Previously, I was assistant academic dean of ACBA. I don't currently hold that position. And
I know. Yes,
previously I was vice president at Kepler. So
yes,
that was a few years ago. But I did hold those positions.
yes, sir.
I was also president and vice president of the Council of Vedic Astrology.
Yes, sir.
So so that so that, but again, that's really not.
But sir,
It's
that's what the position that you hold is because of your
yeah,
knowledge.
yeah. You
And
see, there are honorifics. I don't put them down, but I don't pay much attention to them either. To be honest with you,
definitely,
because we're all still learning. And you received a great honor last week.
thank you,
You
sir.
know,
That's the blessing of
so you're a god of Jyotish. You're one of the great men. So I humbly bow before you.
no, no, sir, never. Please, sir, I always want your blessings because anything we can learn, definitely I can go beyond many things, but the experience that you have gathered across the decades will always make me humble and will I will always look forward to you to learn in astrology because when we use the sutras, we come to know if and buts of it. So, and you
That's
being
right. I
such a
agree.
you being holding such a high position and still being so humble shows the reality of astrology. It teaches us to be humble and grounded, not to be overconfident and boasting.
Well, I there's one thing I always like to say, and that is, if you stick with something long enough, you'll ultimately be revered as a master. And, it's not really something So I'm not putting it down. Don't get the right idea, but
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to keep it in perspective.
Yes, sir. Great, sir.
All right. All right. So, and I could learn a great deal of you. As a matter of fact, I have learned a great deal from you about certain remedial measures, and I appreciate them because I was having a lot of pains and a lot of issues with my health over the past few months, and you helped me greatly with those things. So I
Thank you, sir.
appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
So I would encourage you to listen to this man if he gives you a radio measure because he's done his homework. It's and as a matter of fact, one of the things that first appealed to me about Jyotish was the fact that you weren't just. It was a map, definitely, but if you're on a map and you see a warning that there are certain evil things in certain places,
Yes, sir.
well, you take a detour. Your journey may take a little bit longer, but you get there more safely.
Definitely, sir. Because the remedies that I use actually have been passed from my lineage of my paternal grandfather, and then that lineage has a special source of remedy, and also the remedy through Nadi that has been taught from my gurus. So that combined and few of the remedies that I have practiced and seen, it's getting the rewards, and that's remedy. And then I use also the stellar astrology for the remedies, because until and unless we have to see if remedy is going to work in the chart or not, we cannot just
Yeah.
blindly say that do this and this will happen. That's actually not the actual thing. You have to see like parivartan pada. If the nakshatra we are giving in remedy is in parivartan pada, his purva punya fifth house planets and fifth house in sthir char or some other rasi, and the nakshatra pada it is in, and combining that along with the nakshatra, then I come up with the remedies. So I've seen it working over a period of a time.
All right. So one of my special areas of interest is what I would call the more unusual forms of Vedic astrology. So let's say so this isn't outside the tradition, but I actually found out about Jamini astrology within like about 1 year of studying Parashari astrology. So I actually
Wow.
don't try this at home, but 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 but
Wow,
but
great,
but,
great.
but, but basically, my first set of teachers were associated with the TM movement, and they said the first thing you should not do is go out and buy Brihat Parashara or Shastra. Well,
Great.
the first thing I did was go out and buy a copy of Brihat Parashara or Shastra, and so I'm not really a very obedient student, unfortunately. But as soon as somebody says, "Oh, you're not ready for that. Wait for a couple of years." I go like, "Well, I'll be ready for it someday. I might as well have it and start reading it." And so I started reading through it. I started noticing these things called uh, they call them charakaras or movable indicators in Gemini astrology. And charakaras. So you have double karakas. Like for the self, you have the sun. Sun is for yourself and father. Moon is for your mother and your mind. Mars is for your courage and your siblings, etc., etc. So in Gemini, though, any of the planets can assume those functions,
Wow.
depending on where they're located in your chart. And it's actually a very simple methodology. And tend to, I just tend to like simple methodology, but it's a very simple methodology. And that is you pick the highest planet in degree in your chart, regardless of the sign it's placed in. And that becomes the Atma. That becomes the most important planet in the chart.
Yes.
In my chart, just to give you an example, just a quick example, is Mars. Mars is my Atma planet, and it is significant for me because I had a lot of accidents when I was a kid. I had a lot of
Okay.
a lot of so I stayed out of sports because I was always getting hurt when I was in sports. But I was also argumentative, which is a Mars trait too. You know,
Definitely.
so I think, but I was also logical, which is also a Mars trait. So I
Yes.
wouldn't I wouldn't argue from passion. I would argue from just flat logic.
Yeah.
And I think that those things you start to learn a lot about yourself just by looking at those basic indicators. Also, Gemini has a really unique and distinct way of looking at at looking at aspects. So there are 7 or 8 major indicators. One indicator, the Atmakaraka, is for itself. It's the substitute for the sun. So the Atmakaraka is the substitute for the sun in the chart.
Okay. Wait.
Okay. All right. The Karaka is a substitute for the moon or for your career. It's actually what you do, is how you face the world, is what the person says or does. Okay. And that's the planet which is second highest in degree. In my chart, that's Jupiter. Okay. So that's why I ended up, I guess, in this kind of a role. I was a counselor. My career started as a counselor, now outside of astrology. And the third highest planet in degree is the Karaka, which is the institute for Mars. So this is your brothers, your siblings, your desires, your ambitions, things like that. All Mars significations. The Karaka planet is home, mother, general and educational environment. Okay, so that's Karaka is, in my chart, I think, is Saturn. No, it isn't Saturn. Saturn's actually the Karaka. Mercury's the Karaka. And the fifth highest planet in degree is the planet connected with intelligence, with politics, and in my chart, that's the moon.
Okay.
The sixth highest planet by degree is the sun, so that would give a certain proclivity towards health problems, but also towards spiritual sadhana.
Yes.
And the seventh highest degree planet in my chart is Venus, which is the normal Karaka planet.
Yes.
And that sits in my first house. So I'm a Libra rising of Venus in the first house. And this is the way the planets are placed in the chart. They're all quote unquote smart planets, with one notable exception. And
Great, sir.
and so a lot of the things that I attracted myself to when I was very young were more intellectual pursuits. I wasn't a super genius, don't get the wrong idea, but I was quote unquote pretty smart. And that was the reputation I kind of carried around for a long time. So image and reality are so much different. I really don't consider myself that smart. I'm kind of addicted.
No, sir, you are actually very brilliant, because the way you are explaining me, and I'm in the Gemini Sutra, I'm hearing for the first time, and you're making it very clear how the planets are aligned and how it is different from Brihad Parasara Hora Shastra, the Gemini Sutra. Actually, that was one of my questions, which without asking, you are answering it right now. That's actually, you just, like you said, you have catched the thought of mine and you have answered the question, sir. That's a great one. Yeah.
All right. There is room for an eighth Karaka in Germany, but usually and this is so certain teachers will include the eighth Karaka automatically. Certain teachers, like I studied under K. Rao. He was my first Germany teacher, and he said there was no real need to add an eighth Karaka, because essentially it would come about via a tie. Certain other astrologers have also said that's basically true. Certain other astrologers, namely Sanjay Ra, says you use 8 for living things and you use 7 for non-living things. So let's say nations or buildings. But I think one of the things, so it has nothing against Sanjay, who's a really incredibly intelligent man, but basically you have almost no circumstance where a tie would exist in degree in Vedic astrology. There would always be something, especially with modern astronomical measuring techniques. There would never be a tie. But again, 7 or 8, and Narasimha Rao came up with a really interesting idea for that, and that is, if you have a tie, you can't have 2 ministers occupying the same cabinet position.
Wow.
So I thought that was actually a pretty clever explanation of why the tie would work. But again, the tie is really so if you add that, you add an indicator for the father, okay, or for higher knowledge. But but basically, you can do the same thing with the seven karakas, and I find it works a little bit more efficiently. The other thing about Gemini astrology is I'm going to share a screen just for a second.
Please.
All right. All right. Now, this is a South Indian screen, so bear with me.
Yes, sir.
All right. So I have a lot of what I call squiggly bits in the chart because I use things like the Varnada Lagna, the Aruda Lagna, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So those are all they're part of Parashvi astrology too, but they're used very strongly in Jamini astrology. And also these things like the Aruda for the ninth house is,
Yes, sir.
depending on what methodology you use, you can either leave it in the sign or you have to move it over. If the planet is in the sign, you move it over.
Well,
You move it. So actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
oh,
You'd end up 12 signs away because so so the ninth house of Ruda can either stay in Aquarius or end up um in Scorpio, at least
yeah.
from this methodology. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So we're not going to get into all the mechanics about. So there's a system for assigning aridas. Aridas are what I call indicators of sign manifestations in the chart according to the dashas in Gemini. Basically, um, in Gemini, all the uh, mixed signs or Drisalba signs aspects each other. All right, so Sagittarius always aspects, Gemini always aspects, Virgo always aspects,
Spices.
Pisces, right?
Yes, sir. Definitely.
Right. And the movable signs like Aries, Capricorn, Libra, and Cancer always aspect the fixed signs except for the adjacent fixed signs. So,
Okay.
so Cancer will never aspect Leo. Um, Libra
Libra.
will never aspect Scorpio. Uh, Capricorn will never aspect
Aquarius.
Aquarius. And finally, last but not least, Aries will never aspect Taurus. Okay,
Yes.
and vice versa. Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
you can apply that same form to the fixed and sign aspects. So we have a chart like this. We can see there's a lot of activity. So the chart for when we're talking right now, or 11:15 or so, everything is in mutable signs. And we can use this actually when we're talking about the New Year chart or when we're talking about predictions.
Yes.
And if we're looking at uh, the dashas under Gemini, so you can use the aridas to indicate which things will be important during that Mahadasha. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And and I'm using, and right now we're actually in a Pisces Mahadasha, so we are talking about the world. We're talking
Yeah.
about the scope of the world. So this fits in perfectly. And we're also looking at how we can understand the world because we have Moon and Ketu in the fourth house of your aspect, and we also have Mars. So the sphere of war, the sphere of economic catastrophe, the sphere of land.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So, but if we start to analyze the charts, it's usually in the Gemini aspects, we get a lot of information right away just from these 1, 2, 3, 4 signs, right?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So the Amakraka planet, the most important planet in the chart, is actually Saturn.
Saturn. Yes. And now
Okay.
it's also in transit.
Yep. and it's in the 11th house. So it does mean there's some there. So we'll morph into looking at next year
Yeah.
from this. All right, because essentially these planets. So the New Year starts March 29th. It starts right after an eclipse.
Okay.
Right,
Great.
right, right, right.
Yeah,
So,
sir.
so essentially, most of these planets are going to be in the same sign, except Saturn's going to move into this sign by that time, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So essentially, you have Saturn really high degree. There's a little bit of fear, a little bit of anxiety all around the world, right?
That's true, sir. Actually,
Yeah.
there's a
Okay.
huge row and cry about the Saturn transit, and six planets will be in a specific Pisces sign. So
Yep.
later, when after this, please also enlighten us with that transit.
Yep. And we're probably set for around April 15th. I would say we're probably set for an economic readjustment. Now,
Okay.
whether or not that means that something like Bitcoin will crash or whether we'll have a market crash, that's open to question. But there'll probably be, I would say, the advent of some economic distress. I don't think it'll last very long, if I'm honest with you. I don't. I think it'll only last until around July because around July you have major transits occurring,
Yeah.
major favorable transits occurring
Yes, sir.
across an array of signs.
Mm.
Okay, but this will be the state. It'll be that sense of ambiguity that people feel about the Trump presidency. But there are also other things going on, like Europe's changing. Europe's getting very repressive, at least from what I can see. At
Yeah.
least
Definitely, sir.
in terms of what it's been, and also there is increasing fear about wars in both, escalation of the war in Ukraine and also in the Ukraine, and also fear of wars in, I would say, the general area around Pakistan, Afghanistan, and that would touch into Iran,
Yes, sir.
and also even in Southeast Asia. So we have these kind of like brewing messes popping up all over the place. It doesn't mean any of these things are going to manifest, because we do have and Venus is very powerful in this
Yes,
particular
sir.
sign. So there's some hope that there may be some amelioration of general patterns, but I think we can expect to see either a mild recession or a market crash between March and June, and a recovery after July or so. Okay.
Great.
Uh,
That's
in
a
terms
huge
of
prediction, sir, because many other people invest in share market, and also uh, from my perspective, also I was seeing this downfall happening.
Yeah, but again, I don't think I think one of the things, and one of the things that I've been stressing on on my website is we had this Rahu Saturn conjunction back in 1968, 1967 to 1969. That was actually a relatively prosperous period for a lot of countries. It was astronomical growth, and Saturn's approaching Aries. That's one of the most dynamic growth patterns in a chart from what I've seen historically. So,
Okay.
so, so essentially, I don't expect this to last very long. If I'm quite honest about it, and
Yes,
we
sir.
went through. And we went through this, and we went through the same transit, although it was in Capricorn in the 1990s, in the early 1990s. So I so I'm thinking that a lot of people's expectations are really, I think they're a little panicky right now.
Yeah, definitely. There's a huge panic because of this transit. And this is the reason that people are not very, this panic is created by the people who does not know the astrology very deeply, and neither they have seen the past transit and research on it, how the transit are actually giving the result.
Yeah. So Saturn and Rahu were nasty planets, just by they're destructive planets. But they'll be meeting in Pisces, which in the late 1960s caused a lot of anti-government sentiment.
Yes.
That was basically what it is. So we saw things like, um, gosh, the first thing that popped to mind was Czechoslovakia in 1968, and then the Czechoslovakian uprising in 1968, which was crushed pretty quickly. But they did try to break out, and I think you're going to see just a continuation of governments being overturned over the next year or so.
Yeah, sir,
Yeah.
because you can see right now, for past 2 3 days, we are hearing the news of how Baluch has attacked the Pakistani army and captured the train.
Yeah. So a lot of a lot of folks are focused on the Ukraine, and mainly because the United States has, number one, because the war has been
Yes,
going
sir.
on for a few years, and number two, because of the United States involvement in it, and and the United States gets a cold, the rest of the world gets pneumonia, right? Just because it's such a big
Yes, sir.
party, but it's not really the dominant. It's still the most important economy in the world, but there are other economies which are
So, sir, are you seeing any other war starting in different areas of the world?
yeah, yeah. So at least if I go to this map, so that was a brief introduction in Germany, but I think one of the things is that with this Saturn being in this chart right now, yeah, there'll be some misery, but it'll actually reform into something better with the rid of the ninth house.
Yes.
I think Mars in the first house is will be susceptible to a lot of lies about it, and also K2 Mercury. So this is K2 Mercury and yeah, Mars Mars Mercury combinations, at least from what I've seen, just from my experience, tend to people make up things. They make up stories. So they
Okay.
it's particularly true of the media in the United States, where we have a history of making up stories that go as far back as the Spanish American War.
Yes, sir. Great one.
So so I can't say I'm really surprised by that. Also, the United States is in this major Rahu Mahadasha right now, so it's kind of a big. So a lot of Trump's things about
Yeah.
like to take over Greenland, or maybe Canada would be a 51st state, really aren't out of keeping with that kind of energy. But that doesn't mean he'll do it.
Yes, sir.
The other thing is we have Mars is in Mercury sign, so again a lot of people are getting toked up about conflict, about war, about fighting, and
Does
I
it?
think that I think that's dangerous. I think that's stupid. The other center of attention is on Taiwan, because the United States made promises that it would protect Taiwan, right?
Okay.
Yes. So, but again, they're leaving out, there are larger elements to Southeast Asia than just Taiwan and China. So the Vietnamese are getting upset with China claiming islands, you
Correct,
know,
sir.
uh, and the Vietnamese, so a lot of my friends in the United States will probably be upset with me saying this, but the Vietnamese were essentially our best block against China.
Yeah, that was true actually, sir.
Yeah. So yeah, that's right. And in India, definitely, because India will be one of the larger economic powers over the next few years as well.
Swat.
Uh, just in terms of industrial growth, Indonesia too, Indonesia as well. You know, so so Europe and the United States will maintain a large presence, definitely. But
Mm.
you'll also start to see economies coming out of South America, out of Southeast Asia,
Oh,
starting to gain more of a share. So right about now, the United States is about, I think it's about 25% of the world economy.
that's a huge
Yeah,
actually prediction, or you can say statement that actually it's going to happen lately, but there's a huge statement coming up to the prediction to Sir Garry Gomes that he's predicting not only the is India or Indonesia type and China coming up, but also the South African nations, few of the nation will be coming up in the larger roles and getting a good share of the economic hold around the world.
I and I think we're going to see China doing a lot of the same stuff that the United States did back around
Okay.
the turn of the turn of the back around the turn of the 19th and 20th century. That is essentially, um, they they made loans to country. The country can't pay them off. They say, "Well, we'll take your natural resources." The same kind of
Yeah.
deal the United States is trying to broker with the Ukraine and with Russia. So you're going to see. I think what you're going to see is really a kind of a different kind of a colonial expansion, but a colonial expansion nonetheless. You know,
Yeah.
so it won't be quite so much in the area of like taking over lands, but it'll still be exploiting weaker countries or countries that need financial assistance, and that'll that'll cause problems. I would say in around 10 to 15 years. Okay, but
Mm.
not immediately.
Okay.
Um, okay, but basically, over the next year, politics. I'm thinking again, a lot of upsets in. So Europe is going to go a bit more right, a bit more closed down. They've been showing that direction for the past couple of years. England's probably going to go more right as well.
Okay.
Um, and India, I think, is, even if the government shifts, and I'm not saying it will, but even if the government shifts, it'll still be more business friendly.
Okay.
That,
So are you
so
seeing a shift in government in coming years in India, in upcoming 5 years?
yep, yep. So I don't think they're going to give up that kind of economic growth that they've been having by freeing up markets or by supporting markets. And China, I think, is going to become more like a Western power. Let's put it that way. More like Europe was in the late 19th century, and like the United States was later on. You know, it's,
Wow.
you know, so it's so I think it's going to be interesting to see the power dynamic change because they're in a position to loan money. They're in a position
Yes, sir.
to, yeah, and I I looked at China's chart, and China's in kind of a precarious mahadasha right now.
Okay.
They're sort of. I'm just trying to think of it. They're sort of in a position where they'll have to steal certain things in order to progress.
Good. I got it,
You
sir.
that doesn't mean that other countries haven't stolen things.
Yeah.
That's sort of like the history of the world, right?
Most probably they will be filling up that Aquarius Gada to later the Kumbh of
Yeah,
Aquarius to later
yeah,
explode.
yeah. So I think that a lot of countries, uh, the European countries are are happy with China. I mean, Germany's the largest trade partner I think China has right now outside the United States. And they locate a lot of their businesses there. They have a lot of businesses there. But I think it'll be interesting to see the really pivotal piece, I think, is what's going to happen with the European Union over the next few years, because are they going to turn more controlling, or are they going to become more open-minded and and more and more free speech based? And I think the economies are showing signs of being more controlled economies, at least in
Yeah.
Europe. But that but that is definitely not popular. So so at least from the astrological maps, and again, the European Union map, I did it years ago. I'll have to pull it up again on one show. It isn't a really good
Okay.
astrology chart. So that's why they're like losing members, and people are saying, "Well, we want to get out now," and things like that. So it doesn't mean they haven't accomplished anything. They certainly have, but it's really not a strong map. It's really not a strong astrology chart.
Of course.
Um,
And yes, sir.
go ahead, go ahead, Suraj.
Yeah, I was just trying to think about, see, what will be the transit of Jupiter doing in May to the various things around the world, that will it change the way the people are looking? Because Jupiter in Gemini is not considered to be so good, but still Jupiter being Jupiter itself, and astronomically, if you see, Jupiter also exert a gravitational force on Sun. It's such a
Yeah,
huge planet.
yeah. I think Jupiter and I think that's a really good way to put it. Jupiter and Gemini is not sober. So essentially that's why I think we're going to see a massive turnaround in the economy next year.
Okay.
Or after mid 2025, because it's going to expand trade. It's going to expand um, the options for trade. The other thing is, um, I, and again, I wouldn't rule out some kind of natural catastrophe, or some kind of natural, or some kind of terrorist attack, or catastrophe around in mid-April. But I'm not really banking on it and hoping that won't happen. But Jupiter in Gemini, I think, will actually make people more optimistic, more spendy, if that's the word, more willing to spend money
Yes.
uh, than Jupiter in Taurus. Jupiter in Taurus is a little bit tight, and uh, but then it'll go into the year after. This is where a lot of nationalism comes in. I've seen the United States get into wars when Jupiter was exalted.
Okay.
It's not really a good, um, and a couple of what I would call propaganda driven wars as well. So the war in Iraq was when the United States was when Jupiter was in Cancer for the United States. Now that happens every 12 to 13 years. That doesn't necessarily mean that's a given, and that Jupiter was afflicted. But again, the nationalist tendencies start to pop up more
Yeah.
strongly during those periods.
Actually,
So
sir, here also that you're telling the shift of Jupiter. I also have a predictions to share from you and for the world. If a person has a cash in hand in India, actually, then the gold rate will be skyrocketing after me.
yeah, I would agree. I would agree.
So,
All
so
right.
if any of the friends of mine are seeing, they ask me to give the tips of how to invest. They can invest in gold right now, because gold can even touch in India more than a lakh for a 10 gram, and even 1 lakh 10,000, 20,000 in this year itself.
Yep. And so we can go ahead for
Yeah, yeah, yes, sir.
yeah. I can look at the New Year's now. Hold on, because I did put it up. Hold on. There he is. This one, the Saturn Rahu conjunction chart.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have that cluster of planets in Pisces, right?
Yes.
All right. So this is 3:30. So this is, I think, the first or the second day of the Saturn Rahu conjunction.
Yes, sir.
So again, we have K2 in the first house. So again, it looks like, to be honest with you, 2025 looks like a year in which everybody will feel a little bit like an enemy. That's maybe the best way to put it.
Just to explain, yes, sir.
Yeah. So Mars is aspecting K2. Jupiter is aspecting the first. Is Jupiter still aspecting K2 as well? And so it's actually hope that K2 dissolves things. K2 takes things away, right?
Yes, sir.
So essentially we have Jupiter aspecting K2 in this chart. It'll be taking away things to make way for better things. I would still stick to that position, but we will have a lot of interests clashing because of this. Okay.
Actually, the way you're explaining is much more deeper. Like Ketu will take away things to make a way for the better things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great one, sir.
Yeah. So, and I think this particular combination down here, it looks a bit frightening to people, and Mars aspecting the first house looks frightening to people. But I think you'll start to see real estate start to move a little bit more because of Mars.
Wow.
Moving into the sun, and then in July moving into Leo. And also over here, we have this Saturn aspect. Saturn's aspect in the first house in this chart, and Mercury and Venus are also aspecting the first house. So both Mercury and Venus are retrograde. That's
Yes, sir.
it's a little bit of irrational optimism there. Okay, so it's like everything is going to work out great, but we have this Saturn over here saying, no, you can't say that. So you have this fear about existing structures being disrupted. Okay, but they need disruption in order for things to move forward. I think,
Yeah.
personally, it's at least that's what the astrology is telling me. It's not something that although I do believe that personally, So I'm not a revolutionary. Don't get the wrong idea.
No, no.
I don't. But uh, I do think things have to shift, and I would say internationally, in order for people to get treated fairly again.
So can we interpret this chart as this is also Ketu sitting at the first house in Lagna will make the head of a country to take some wrong decision or headless decision or headless speech also.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there'll be a lot of wrong decisions made in 2025. Okay.
And also the seventh house of partnership, many of the partners may change the position because Saturn Rahu conjunction illusion, the people coming out of the illusion or the nation coming out the illusion of being the ally or partner of that sort. Can we see that also?
Yep. And the other thing I would take away from this would be a lot of what I would call mini wars. Okay.
Yeah.
So like conflicts that don't last very long because Saturn really isn't dominant, and Saturn's really weak in the chart. Okay.
Yes.
So essentially there'll be what I would call quick clashes or quick fights, but nothing really lasting all that long. That's what I'm saying.
So the news channel promoting in India World War III can happen. That is out of rules. Now.
Yeah. I know a lot of astrologers are predicting that. I don't.
Yeah, yes, sir.
I don't think that's in the stars right now.
Great, sir. This is one of the questions I kept it for the last, but you answered it here. Thank you so much.
All right. Does that help a little bit in terms of so I kind of brushed over Johnny. The thing I didn't talk about was the dashes or sign dashes, and so essentially with this chart, Capricorn is the most is the sign, and Mars is the most important planet in this chart. So there will be a lot of quick changes over the next 12 months. A lot of quick changes. Um, the dread is coming from Saturn right now, but the changes will be actually be fast and rather sudden and rather immediate, I think.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, and Capricorn is the first sign. So it's in the fifth house. So it's in the house of politics. So I was just, and also investments. So if those are the two areas that are going to be hit the most.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does that help?
Yeah, definitely, sir. Great one. So, and moving forward, sir, anything you want to say to the recent so-called student of astrology? How
I,
they should come
well,
upon?
I think if you're learning astrology, one of the things that I encourage most people to do is to keep an open mind. Try to okay, so try not to um, panic when you see a negative planetary combination because they're not always evil. Good combinations are not always good. So essentially, what I recommend people do is to take what I would call um, a cellular approach to the chart or an atomic approach to the chart. And what I mean is, you look at the sign, you look at the lord of the sign, and without emotion, you say, okay, what does K2 mean in the chart?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you don't use oh, it's a malefic, it's a natural malefic. Malefics are action starting signs, or action starting planets, excuse me. Benefics are usually kind of slow and kind of status quo planets. They're not really very exciting. You know, it doesn't mean they're bad. It just means
Yes,
they're
sir.
sort of like everything is fine. I can float. You know, everything's okay. I don't have to work really hard. Okay, and people will
Yes,
treat
sir.
me well. Those kinds of things, but they can also induce a certain amount of luck. But unless you have a malefic to kick them, uh, a
Great,
person
sir.
can, a person can get lazy. So malefics produce change. Malefics produce hardship. Hardship makes us want to change. Okay, so
Yeah.
if you're in pain, you want to get out of pain, right? You want to move to get out of the pain,
Great one, sir.
right? If you're not in pain, you don't want to move, and that can be beneficial to you if things are just plopping along very nicely. But also look at the negative parts of benefics.
Yeah.
So, so that laziness, or that I won't say laziness, that satisfaction can make you a little bit complacent.
Mm. Yes, sir.
You know, so they're not. It's not bad. I'm not saying Jupiter and Venus and isolated Mercury are bad, but they're not going to give you challenges which will make you improve yourself. Uh,
Definitely.
yeah, malefics will.
Actually, the right now the thing that you explained actually remembered me about my gymming time when 2018, 1920s, I was into gym and physical sports. There, my coach used to say, the more you sweat, the more you sweat in the field is the less you bleed in the playground, firstly. And secondly, until unless you go through the wear and tear, your body will not be able to sustain when it's the hardship timing. And this is what you explained, like the benefics give you the easy way out and slow movement, and malefics tend to give you the hardship, which in return give you the things and so-called experience to move out in life and achieve something better. That's a great one to see the astrology And actually, I would love to request to our viewers, don't always see the negative planet and just predict that this is going to happen until unless you are that sure, because there is various other things, yoga, Veda, Vam Veda, and then nakshatras into it, Charrasi, and Mooladasa is also there. People used to ignore this and give prediction blindly.
The other thing I would advise people to is not to embrace the bad news either, because there's a temptation to say, "Oh, I'm seeing this malefic. It's just going to be a horrible year. I'm not going to accomplish anything, so I might as well not try."
Yes, sir.
That's the Tamasic side of malefics.
So,
So the Rajasic planets are Mercury and Venus, right? Okay.
yes, sir.
The Sattvic planets are Sun, Moon, and Jupiter, and the Tamasic planets are basically the rest. Okay,
Yeah.
so that can lead to a certain amount of inertia. Mars is basically Tamasic because it's dark, it's destructive.
Yeah.
Yeah. But basically, you can use that energy, as you said, as your coach said, to improve yourself or to discipline yourself or to uh, realize um, you can actually use Rahu's energy to improve on a spiritual level.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
Definitely.
so again, all these planets have their uses. The key element, I think, in interpreting astrology is really to use it's a Mercury science. So Mercury is rules what quality? It rules discrimination.
Yeah.
So essentially, you can apply logic as part of your conversation. You can apply knowledge, which is Venus and Jupiter's realm. You can improve. You can use common sense, and you can use willpower, which is the moon and the sun. You can use Saturn, which is discipline. But
Yes, sir.
you need Mercury to discriminate as to whether or not this is going to be helpful to you and how much energy you have to apply and whether or not it's just something that's going to happen and it'll pass over you or whether it's something you'll have to take some kind of action about.
Great, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. That's a great one, sir. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Just a second. Yeah, sir.
I just want to say thank you very much, Suraj.
Yeah, sir.
It's been
Thanks to you, sir, that you enlighten us with Gemini Sutras thing, Atma Karak and everything, because many people does not, they know what is Atma Karak, but they never use it. The way you showed us the inside of Gemini Sutra. And one more thing I would like to request my viewers, Sir Garry Gomes will also teach Gemini Sutra. So the things and the link of his course will be pinned in our comment section. If anybody wants to learn from Sir, they can directly apply for the courses, and Sir will definitely guide you and teach you through the Gemini Sutras, as he is one of the renowned and still working in that and progressing. The sutras that you get on the book are not, I will let me be very frank, none of the writers give 100% of their techniques and sutras and their knowledge in the book. Firstly. Secondly, Mercury is the planet which is either retrograde or debilitated or combust in 90% of our planet, if of our charts. So, me being a Mercury combust person, and I'm very straightforward. I don't go by books. I go by the word of my gurus. So you need to get a guru to guide yourself to the astrology, because it's very, very vast and very, very deep. You will take a three books and three books take three different things. And a person working in this field for past 30, 40 years knows which is actually applicable and which are just for the purpose to sell. So I will request any person who is interested in Vedic astrology and Gemini Sutra, shall go to the link and learn from Sir Garry Gomes. And in future also, any of your questions, please write us, mail us, and also in the comment section, any of the questions on Journey Sutra, we will again have a uh, one-to-one conversation, and we will put down these questions, and sir will be willing to help us out. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's been a real pleasure. And
Same here, sir.
and I thought I had one final word of advice to offer, but I've forgotten it, so it can't be that important. So it's a, it's just, but like I said, uh, oh yeah, that was it. The books are, yeah, the books are are textbooks. One of the things you learn, excuse um, or let's see. Hey, 5 more minutes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. One of the things that you're learning as you go through the books and as you go through school in general is that as you face life, the books contain sacred knowledge. That's true, but they're also amplified knowledge. What I would call amplified. It's like the person's yelling at you to teach you a lesson,
Yes, sir.
and it's so you have to take those lessons and subtly weave them into real life experience, as opposed to just saying, "Well, Parashara says" or Jamini says X. It's it's not. It doesn't diminish the knowledge in those books in any way, shape, or form. But if you just do something which is just a repeat of what the book says, you're not learning. You're just parroting.
Yes, sir. True.
Okay. If you're learning something, you're definitely getting knowledge, but you're not. You need to synthesize knowledge.
Yes, sir. True, sir.
Okay.
That's really my pleasure and the pleasure of the listeners to have you on our podcast. And soon, sir, we will be looking forward to get another tidbit and a short interview from you. And laterly, we will plan out something if the students from India would love to learn from you and around the world. We will be really very welcoming you to help come in our platform and teach the students the Gemini Sutra and anything experience that you want to share. My platform is open for you 24 into 7, and you know, sir, how much you actually have helped me to come at this place and then take your interview, because I would like to also inform you he is one of the pioneer in giving me the muhurata, when to start, how to start, and he guided me when I was down and out, thinking what to do next. So we always need a mentor and we always need a guru. So he is one of the person who is gem, and he replies me late to the right and early in the morning whenever I need help from sir side. So thank you very much, sir, to have you on my channel, and soon we will have another conversations, and love to the way you explain the benefic malefics and the transits, the way you and Cry was there in the YouTube field and the astrological realm. So you cleared it out for our viewers. Thank you very much, sir.